Station. This is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
We are ready.
Copy that. Houston ACR, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Houston ACR. How do you hear me?
And station has you loud and clear.
Great, thank you. Stand by for opening remarks.
Hi, I'm Annie Rundy, she, her. I'm an education ranger at Mount Rainier National Park. We're so grateful to the astronauts of Mission 66 for joining us today and answering questions from middle school students at Columbia Crest ASIM Academy. Here's our first question.
Hi, I'm Adeline. My question is, how do you use teamwork in space?
Hi, Adeline. So we use teamwork for a number of different things. First off, we use teamwork when we're training. So as a crew, we train to go to space together, and we use teamwork for a lot of the different procedures we practice for, but then we also use teamwork just on a day-to-day basis. So, for example, if Kayla is doing an event or I'm doing an event during the day, then I may see how she's doing, if I'm ahead or behind, and vice versa. So throughout the day, we're constantly moving around on tasks, moving through the station and using teamwork both in our day-to-day lives as well as our training time.
Hi, I'm Lauren, and my question is, what are some of the hardest parts about being an astronaut?
Well, I think one of the hardest parts about our current mission is being away from our families. 6 months away from home is a pretty long time, even for people who got kind of used to that in the military, like Raja and I. But luckily, we have a lot of resources to stay in touch with them back home. And then in terms of our job, I think some of the hardest tasks we do are spacewalks and spacewalk training. That's really tough skills. It's a physically and mentally challenging experience, and it's also pretty lengthy. We're outside for 6.5 hours during spacewalk doing that, and I think for a lot of us, learning Russian is challenging. So I would encourage all of you to pay attention in your language classes and get good at learning languages, because that's definitely a challenge for all of us.
Hi, I'm Bridget, and my question is, after being in space, did it change the way you thought about life?
Well, Bridget, I think different people have different reactions, but I think what's really similar and that what did change is I definitely realized how boundaryless the actual Earth is. And so I think we'd heard about that and people talk about that, that there's no lines or countries and you can't see those, but it really is profound when you see it out the window, and you have to look at a map or look at a computer to really figure out where those divisions are, because they don't exist naturally. And so that's pretty cool and pretty profound. And I think the other thing for me that changes is just realizing how fragile the Earth is. And so we get to see the sunrise and sunset 16 times a day because we're orbiting every 90 minutes. And so when you do that and the sun's coming over the horizon or going below the horizon, you can actually see the layers of the atmosphere, and it's super, super thin compared to the Earth and then just all the black space around it. And it reminds us that everything we know, live, love, breathe is in that really, really thin layer. So we really have to take care of it.
Hi, my name is Michael. How do you grow plants in space?
It's an awesome time to be asking that question, because we've been doing a lot of plant experiments lately. We actually have several different ways that we grow plants up here and different types of experiments. So sometimes we grow really little plants, and usually those experiments are studying how plants' gene expression changes in microgravity. And we even have a centrifuge where we can spin plants, and that way we can simulate different levels of gravity, like the ones we might see someday on the moon or Mars. And sometimes, I think probably our favorite is when we get to grow bigger plants and edible plants. So when we first got up here, we had a crop of chilies growing, and a couple weeks after we arrived, we harvested a batch of those and got to eat them. We had a taco night to celebrate our chilies, and they were quite excellent. But all the things plants need to grow on Earth is what we control up here. So their light, their nutrients, their oxygen content, and we just make sure that they have everything they need and check on them often, and they actually grow pretty well.
Hi, my name is Annika, and I was wondering, are there any lasting effects on your mind and body after a flight?
So, Annika, that's one of the big questions we're trying to answer. And so one of our crewmates is Mark Vandehei, who will be up here for basically a year. And so there's also been several other astronauts, Christina Cook, Scott Kelly, and others who are continuing to push how long we can stay in space. And we're using that to study what happens afterwards. So we know that there's a lot of things that do happen. There's some bone loss. There's arterial stiffening, and there's a lot of things that are very similar to what happens when you age. And then when Scott Kelly was up here for a year, they were actually able to compare his DNA to his brother's DNA, which was that the DNA was changing opposite of what it would normally do when you're aging. But then when he came back to Earth, it went back to normal. And so there's a whole on our bodies. So us giving samples of our bodies or doing different activities, and they're measuring us both at large scale levels, how we're functioning, how we're thinking, but also microscopically and taking samples and looking at our DNA. And so, yeah, there's a lot that changes in space, and we're still trying to figure out, does that change continue in a predictable way, or is there some point in like maybe 15 months, 18 months, 2 years where something drastically changes? And that's important as we go to the moon to stay, and as we go to Mars, which will take a long time to get there and back.
Hi, my name's Luca, and my question is, what made you want to be an astronaut?
Hi, Luca. For me, I didn't grow up dreaming specifically of becoming an astronaut. I knew I liked school. I was interested in STEM. My science and math classes were my favorite in high school. I knew I wanted to study engineering in college, and I knew I wanted to serve. And that's how I ended up at the Naval Academy and then eventually serving in the submarine force. And it wasn't until after I had served on a submarine that it first occurred to me that I could even become an astronaut. That experience of challenging myself to lead and work as a team in a really highly technical, mission-driven environment, and then understanding all the parallels all of a sudden between serving on a submarine and working and living in space is really what inspired me to think that maybe that's something I could do. And I had some really good mentors who encouraged me to apply, and lucky for me, it worked out.
Hi, I'm Addison, and my question is, what is your favorite astronaut food?
Ooh, Addison. So I was actually really pleasantly surprised by how good the food is up here. So like Kayla said, we were both in the military, and so we'd experienced what's called military MREs, which are dehydrated food. And I'll say this food's better than that. So here's the packets they come in. Kayla will show you some of them. And so we've got everything from fruit and veggies to meats to desserts. So I think my personal favorite is when we kind of make our own things. And so we had a semi-pizza night, and I say semi because we don't actually have real pizza, but we used basically tortillas, and then we had some tomato sauce and put other things on it, and then we had to get creative about how to cook a pizza. So we used some aluminum foil in the food warmer we have to semi-melt or make the cheese soft. But it was close to at-home pizza, so I think that was my favorite so far. Like Kayla mentioned, a real hit was taco night when we used the chilies we'd grown up here and actually got to have that. And I think fresh food is always popular. There's something about the texture of something fresh, so like fresh fruit and vegetables, and the crispiness of it is very satisfying. Since a lot of the food we eat, when it's rehydrated, it's a little more mushy. And so the sensation of your teeth like biting into something that's more firm and crispy is really fun. And so we always look forward to visiting cargo vehicles, because there's usually some surprise snacks hidden for us in there.
Hi, my name is Willa, and my question was, how challenging was the training?
Our training for spaceflight is a bit of a marathon. Raj and I are both in the same astronaut training class. So we started in 2017 and did just over 2 years of basic training before we graduated from being astronaut candidates to being assignable astronauts. And then once we got assigned to our mission, we trained for probably another 1.5 years straight, just before we were able to launch. So it's long. But the entire team is there to support us and teach us everything we needed to know to succeed in our evaluations and our jobs. So it's hard work, especially like I mentioned, spacewalk training. And I think for Raj and I both, Russian language is a tough one. Robotics training, flight training, which is easier for Raja because he's a military pilot, so he has a lot of experience with that. And of